and welcome to another episode of Quick and Nerdy. As always, I'm your host, Brandon McCoy, technical advisor at Veeam Software, located in Atlanta, Georgia, and as always, representing that Veeam cloud and service provider community. Today's video, though, is for all Veeamers alike, customers, end users, MSPs, resellers. Today we're going to be talking about Veeam and Object First. And I want to talk about Object First from two different perspectives. In one light, I'm going to be talking about Object First as a feature release in the next set of Veeam products. From the other perspective, I want to talk about Object First as a company/product that has very close ties to Veeam. Now, some of you may have already heard of this, some of you this may be new, so more will be revealed as we go. Let's jump right in. I'm real excited to talk about both of these perspectives. But hold up, what is object storage in the first place? So if you're not familiar, Gartner defines object storage as a system that houses data and structures called objects. There's usually some metadata. This is unstructured data similar to file systems. And the system serves hosts via APIs such as S3. You may be familiar with like Amazon S3 or S3 compatibles like Wasabi. There's a whole bunch of them. Now, most object storage refers to the cloud. Those are the most popular ones that I see at Veeam anyway. There are some on-prem object storage repositories, and we'll talk about those a little bit. Now, the benefits of object storage for both on-prem and in the cloud is maximum storage efficiency with compression and dedupe capabilities, right? The way that we can store this data as opposed to your traditional block-based, backup on a disk is just remarkable. The amount of space that you can save. And when we're talking about backup data, which of course that's what Veeam is all about, you know as well as I do, these backup sets can get quite large. When we talk about the frequency of backups, the daily change rate, how long do we need to keep these backups? These data sets can be large, so making the decision of the backup repository, what we're going to spend our money on in terms of storage is a very important thing to consider. Now, some other great benefits of object storage is that there's I'd say a good number of these vendors that provide something called object lock. Object lock allows backups to become immutable, and this is something that Veeam integrates with, and we'll showcase that in the next slide when that came out. But basically, this means if your Veeam server gets hacked, the backups can't be deleted, the retention can't be changed, so it's some ransomware proofing, right? Now, when we talk specifically about the cloud, we could take AWS for instance. The price per gig is going to be cheaper to go to S3 than it is to disk-based storage, and it's less moving pieces. Let's say today you decided that you would like to back up to Amazon's cloud, okay? So the cloud is an ambiguous word in a lot of times. So Amazon has two ways really, from a Veeam perspective at least, that you could get to the cloud. The first would be to deploy an EC2 instance or a computer, Windows or Linux computer in Amazon's cloud. Set it up inside a VPC, a virtual private cloud with networking configurations, firewalls, gateways, all that stuff. And then attach some EBS volumes to that machine or some disk, right? Some hard drives, some solid state drives, whatever you want from a performance perspective. And you're going to be paying monthly for that computer to run, and you're going to be paying monthly for that storage whether you're using it or not, right? And the price per gig compared to an S3 bucket is just pennies on the dollar for the S3. Now, the S3 storage, you do not create a EC2 instance or a computer. You don't even have to set up all the networking complexities. You just spin up an S3 bucket in your AWS cloud, and Veeam can back up to it. Now, there are some limitations, or I would say some extra steps involved in order to get to this S3. That is something that we're here to talk about today, but just know that in terms of the cloud, object storage is almost always cheaper than disk-based storage. Now, like I mentioned, there are some on-prem devices that offer object storage as their format. Sometimes these can be a little pricey. Sometimes they can be a little complex and difficult to set up, but they are available. Now, the history of Veeam and object storage starts back in 2019 when we introduced the object storage integration through our scale out backup repository. So going back even further, scale out backup repositories is a way that Veeam takes two separate repositories. This could be two different volumes on a computer, two different computers, devices, and Veeam puts a layer of abstraction on top of them so that it sees it as one giant repository, right? So it's like a pool of disk or a pool of machines that Veeam sees as one repository, so you have more space to write to. So that's how we first started working with object storage. You would have a Veeam server with a local Veeam repository on a disk. That could be a Windows Linux computer, a NAS, a SAN, an external hard drive. And you would attach your S3 or object storage bucket to that scale out repository. Now, in the beginning, we were limited to the vendors. I believe AWS was the first. Then we started releasing others like Wasabi and Azure and Google. But the capability was limited as well. In the first release of object storage integration, all that we could do was archive our old backups into the object storage bucket in the cloud. So, you back up locally for 30 days, and then you have, your GFS, 4 weeks for the month, 12 months for the year, 7 years for HIPAA compliance. All those GFS points are full backups, so object storage was a great option to send all that long-term data to the cloud. However, people wanted more. They wanted the cloud to take care of their 3-2-1 rule, right? That 3 copies of your data on 2 devices with 1 offsite. So in 2020, Veeam releases its copy mode, which is the ability to not only archive your backups to object storage, but now leave that local copy on-prem. So if you have your 30 days local, that 30 days is also copied into the object storage. Now, we still need a backup and replication server, and we still need a local repository in a scale-out repository configuration, but now you've got the archive, the copy mode, and then we come out with immutability, which is integrating with the object lock I mentioned earlier that prevents backups from being deleted, encrypted, modified, from retentions being changed, ransomware proofing your backups with the object storage. So lots of great things, but there's still some questions, some features that are unanswered. What about object storage as a primary repository? Customers wanted a way to go to object storage first. So like I mentioned, we've got clients who have 1 or 2 computers or laptops that are never in the office. And for those, they want to go to the cloud-based object storage directly. They don't want to have a Veeam server on-prem, or they do have a Veeam server on-prem, but they don't want to have a local backup. They just want to go directly to object storage. And that's the first perspective in which we talk about object first. So Vnext promises direct to object storage. Backup and replication for virtualized environments as well as NAS backup. Windows Agents version 6 Windows Agents version 6 as well as Linux Agent version 6 and even the Mac Agent version 2 will all be able to go directly to object storage, whether that is an on-prem object storage repository or it is a object storage in the cloud. In the next set of releases for these major products, you'll be able to go directly to object storage. Now, backing up to object storage sounds great, and let's be honest, it is great. It's a really good way for people to get their data into some cheap storage. Usually this is going to be the cloud, right? But it still leaves a lot of questions. The first questions I thought about were, what about local backups for faster restores? Has everybody forgotten about instant VM recovery? That's not going to be as fast from a cloud backup, but I still want to use object storage. How am I going to satisfy the 3-2-1 rule if I'm just going directly to the cloud? And how am I going to get these large data sets with a very small pipe from production straight to the cloud, right? So what if I could use object storage on-prem but take away the complexity and the cost of having an on-prem object storage appliance, and maybe still have another copy and some object storage in the cloud. If only there was a way to get the best of both worlds, from the immutability to the price point to the ease of setup, etc. Well, that's the second perspective I want to talk to you about in terms of Object First. So introducing Object First, both the company and the product, Object First. Super excited to talk about this. This is a Linux-based appliance that is on-prem. It is designed and optimized specifically for Veeam. As a matter of fact, Ratmir, one of our founders of Veeam, is the same person who founded this company. So when they were building this product, they had Veeam in mind. I mean, this comes from the people who brought you Veeam in the first place. And you know, it's just perfect timing, and I don't think it's a coincidence that as we are getting ready to release backing up directly to object storage, or backing up to object storage first, the founder of Veeam comes out with a new company slash product called Object First, specifically geared with Veeam in mind. Now, this is ransomware resilient right out of the box. So the object lock, the immutability, is a simple checkbox. It's incredibly performant for fast backup and instant recovery, right? So you're getting all that compression, deduplication. From a performance perspective, we've already been testing this out in the lab with the beta and seen some great results with large data sets. It's easy to deploy and manage and scale. You know, we have a one node cluster. It took us about 15 minutes to set up. It's easy to add nodes to the existing cluster. Great user-friendly web UI interface to manage that we're going to get into in the demo here. And it's super affordable, so it maximizes the price to performance ratio. So all the benefits of object storage with an on-prem appliance. Now, this could be a single repository that you back up to, or you could put it as part of a scale-out repository. So what I think is really neat is in version 12 of backup and replication, one of the features we're coming out with is all object storage scale out repository, right? So imagine having this object first appliance as your primary on-prem repository built for things like instant VM recovery and quick restores. And then having maybe a Wasabi bucket as your capacity tier in the cloud, or maybe using AWS S3 for capacity and Glacier for archive, right? I mean, there's a lot of great possibilities to be object storage all around using object first, both from a Veeam perspective of being able to go to object storage directly and the company slash appliance object first. I think that's enough PowerPoint. Let's get right into the demo. So here we are. This is the web UI for our Objects First appliance. And this is the main dashboard. Really slick interface. You know, I really like it. You can come in here, kind of take a look at everything that's going on from a throughput network perspective. Under the monitoring dashboards, you can get a little more granular here and kind of see what's going on with the cluster, the buckets. You know, I can see my disk IO, you know, kind of just browse through here and see what's going on. This is the live setting, and you can also look at previous trends as well. Any kind of events or alerts that have gone on, you can see up here. Inside the settings, one thing I wanted to show you was that two-factor authentication is supported as well, so some good security around it. The nodes, so this is the single node that I have. It's got the capacity, the use. You know, we're working with about 125 terabytes of usable. And I've got two 10 gig NIC cards. You can see here I have a whole bunch of 16 terabyte hard drives, an NVMe cache, and a couple SSD flash. So here are my S3 buckets. This is where I can create the buckets. You can create multiple buckets, you know, for different repositories. And we can also create multiple access keys. You know, this is similar to the way that we work with object storage already. So I'll just briefly touch on that. There are some other videos that walk you through that, but it's a real easy setup here, and I really love the simplicity and ease of use. So first thing I want to do to get this going is I want to create a bucket. So we'll call this code cracker. And you can see this box is already checked. Enable versioning, required for using the immutability feature. So no complex setup there. It's a checkbox and it's already been checked for you. So we'll create the bucket here. Just takes a few seconds. All right. Now you can see that there's already been some buckets created. There's also been some S3 keys created, and I can use one of these keys to add credentials into my Veeam server, but I'm going to create a new key. So we'll create key. We'll call this key name code cracker, and we'll create the key. Okay, now I've got my access key here. I will need that information in a moment. What's really cool is with a lot of the public clouds, your secret access key can never be shown again once you get it. So if you forget to write it down, you have to create a new key. If I want to take a look at my key details, all I got to do is enter in my username and password, and I can get that information again. And that's actually what I'm going to do here. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste these keys. So my access key and my secret key. Okay, go ahead and close that. All right, now one other thing it's going to ask me for is the access point. And the access point is a term for object storages, like if you set up a Wasabi bucket, if you set up a Backblaze bucket, it's going to ask for a service point, and the service point for us is going to be the IP address of this machine with the HTTP or HTTPS. So all I got to do right here really is copy and paste that. I'm going to leave out that port right there, and I'm just going to have HTTPS with the IP, and I should be good. All right, so let's head on over to backup and replication. This is the beta version 12, and so if I go to backup infrastructure and I go to backup repositories, you can see I've already got some. I'm going to add a new one, and this is going to be an object storage repository. It's going to be S3 compatible. We're going to call it code cracker dash object first, or OF. Okay. Now the account, that's that service point that I needed, right? So let's go ahead and grab that. Oops. Copy. Okay. The region, I'm just going to leave this as is. This is typically for when you're in a specific cloud. You have to specify the region for like the Wasabi data center or the AWS data center that it's in. So you could just leave this defaulted here. For credentials, I'm going to add, and it's going to ask for my access key and my secret key. So here is my access key. Here is my secret key. And I'm going to delete my key as soon as I'm finished, so don't be getting any ideas. All right. So now when it says connection type, if I choose here, so direct or through a gateway server. So direct, the backup proxies and agents managed by backup server can directly access the object storage repository, right? Or through a gateway server. So if you want to specify a specific machine that has the ability to talk to this object repository, you can. We're just going to leave it as direct. That should be good for most environments. We'll click next. Okay, it's going to verify that SSL certificate. And for bucket, if I browse, it should show me the bucket I created. There's my code cracker bucket. Okay. Folder, we'll create a new folder. And okay, you can rename that if you want. I'm just going to leave it as new folder. We can limit the amount of data we send there, just like the other object storage repositories, and the immutability. So you can set it for a maximum of 90 days, and backups can't be deleted, etc. for those number of days. Now I am going to be doing a backup, and my lab admins have told me to make sure that the immutability isn't set for too long, because guess what? If I set it to 90 days, they can't do anything about it. But I don't want to get in trouble with the bosses, so we're going to set the immutability policy for 2 days, and we'll click next. We can leave this as default, the mount server for the restore things like instant VM recovery. Typically, it's just going to be the Veeam server itself. We'll leave this checked. We'll click next. apply, and it'll just take a moment for the repository to be added. Now, typically the next thing I would do after adding object storage is I would attach it to another repository in a scale out repository configuration, right? Now, I could do that. Like I said earlier, if I wanted to, I could create a all object storage scale out repository, right? So I could have the performance tier be my on-prem object first repository for fast restores and the local copy. And then for my capacity tier, I could choose, maybe my Wasabi bucket, right, as the long term, or I could even choose AWS S3 for maybe the weeklies and monthlies. And then for the archive tier, I could go to, a Glacier or something, but I'm not going to do any of that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a backup job, and I'm going to target the code cracker object first repository as a direct to object storage backup. So let's create a backup job. I'm going to do a virtual machine backup. We'll call this code cracker job. Next, we're going to pick a machine, and I've got a decent size file server here. Where is it? Under production, I think. Yeah, ATL beta file 01. So this is a 150 gig virtual machine. We'll click next. For the repository, we're going to check our code cracker object first S3 bucket, and we're going to keep the retention to 2 days, just like the immutability policy is. And we're just going to leave it as is. All the other fancy stuff, is your typical job settings. Those can be found in other videos. So we'll just kind of next finish through this. Okay, I'm not going to, we'll go ahead and do a schedule, run daily at 10 p.m. That's fine. And then I want to go ahead and run the job when I finish. Okay, so we are going to start the job, and I'm going to get all the way through it, but I am going to pause the video until the job is done. We'll come back and see how long it took. All right, so the job finished. It looks like it took about 6 minutes. You can see some of the statistics down there. So this thing was flying pretty fast. The warning message is just because we're in the beta. There's an unsigned plugin, so you can just ignore that. Everything worked without a hitch, so not too shabby. So there's two last things I'm going to show you, and then we're going to wrap this up. The first thing I'm going to show you is the immutability feature. So if I go into my backups and I find the job I just did, this code cracker job right here, and maybe I'm a malicious employee or a hacker. I've hacked into your Veeam server, and I'm going to start deleting all your backups, right? So I'm just going to delete this. Are you sure? Yes. So it's going to begin the process of trying to delete my backup. Luckily, that immutability checkbox was on there. It was super easy, right? We didn't have to do anything. And look at that. Unable to delete the backup because it is marked immutable, right? So that is a super cool feature of a lot of object storage vendors, and with object first, it makes it so easy, right? It's a checkbox that's already checked. You just have to tell Veeam how many days you'd like it to be immutable, up to 90. Last thing we're going to do here, I'm going to pick that same backup job, but we're going to do instant recovery. Okay, click next. We're going to restore to a new location just because this machine's still currently running, and we're going to separate it. Okay, so a restore file name is the same name, and then I'll just put CK for code cracker. We'll leave it on the same folder, leave all this the same. This is typical instant recovery stuff outside the scope of this video. Just want to show you how fast we can get it up and running. Okay, so I am going to power the machine on once the instant VM recovery process is started, but I'm not going to connect the VM to the network simply because in this demo lab, that production machine still is running and it could cause some issues. So we'll click finish here, and I'm so confident in the speed of this that I'm not even going to pause the video. How about that? So this instant VM recovery process is going to start. We're going through our typical instant VM recovery of using vPower NFS, which is Veeam proprietary technology that spins the machine up from its backup file. The machine is being ran on the host directly from the backup file on the repository. And again, this is coming from object storage, which is just amazing how fast this is happening. So again, we're getting the best of both worlds, right? And we're a little less than a minute, and boom, that machine is now up and running. I could open the console if I wanted to. Here's the machine running, and I could migrate to production when I'm done making my changes. For this video, I'm going to stop publishing so that it'll just tear down everything I just did. And of course, I'm going to thank you for taking some time today to watch this video. Again, this is version 12, which right now is in beta. The Object First appliance is also in beta with us, but it is coming soon. We can't wait, and I can't wait to see you next time on Quick and Nerdy. Thanks so much. Have a great one.